Ladies, gentlemen, let me ask you something. How many times have you said ice when deep down everything in you wanted to say no? You see, we've all been there, agreeing to things we didn't want, staying quiet when we should have spoken up, and carrying the weight of guilt that doesn't even belong to us. But here's the truth. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't serve you, you're saying no to yourself. And that's not strength, that's self-betrayal. Today, I want to show you the hidden power in saying no and why it's not rejection, it's actually respect. Respect for your time, your values, and your life. Saying no is not selfish. It's an act of self-respect. Think about how often we have been conditioned to believe that agreeing, accommodating, and stretching ourselves thin makes us good, kind, or worthy. From a young age, many of us are taught that putting others first is the noble thing to do. And while kindness is powerful, it should never come at the expense of our own well-being. When you say no to something that drains you, that compromises your boundaries, or that takes you away from what truly matters, you're not rejecting the person. You're honoring yourself. And that is one of the greatest signs of self-respect. Imagine a life where every time someone asks something of you, you feel pressured to agree. At first, it feels like the easy path because you avoid conflict, you avoid disappointing others, and you get to keep the peace. But over time, this pattern chips away at your energy, your confidence, and even your identity. You begin to live by the expectations of others rather than your own values. And the result is quiet resentment, silent frustration, and a constant question in the back of your mind, why am I never at peace? This is where the power of saying no becomes transformational. When you set a boundary and stand firm, you are communicating something powerful. Not just to others, but to yourself. You're declaring that your time, your energy, and your values are worthy of protection, that your needs are just as important as anyone else's, that you are not here to be stretched, bent, or broken for the convenience of others. And the moment you realize this, the guilt starts to lose its grip on you. Guilt only comes from a false belief that by saying no, you are letting people down. But in reality, you are simply choosing to show up for yourself first, so that you can later show up stronger, healthier, and more authentically for others. Think about the people you admire most. They are not the ones who always say yes. They are the ones who have clarity. They know what aligns with their mission and what does not. They protect their time as if it is gold because they understand that it is. They say no to distractions, to obligations that don't serve them, to relationships that drain them, and to commitments that don't align with their vision. And that's why they have the energy, the focus, and the strength to say yes to the things that actually matter. That isn't selfishness. That's strategy. That's wisdom. That's self-respect. And here's the truth. People who genuinely value you will not leave because you said no. They will respect you more because you've shown them that your boundaries are not negotiable, that you are not someone to be walked over, and that your time is precious. On the other hand, those who get upset when you start respecting yourself were only benefiting from your lack of boundaries in the first place. That's not love, that's convenience. And the moment you begin to see that clearly, the guilt of saying no fades and is replaced by a quiet confidence. Self-respect is not about arrogance, it's about alignment. It's about choosing actions, words, and commitments that align with the life you want to build. Saying yes to everything is a life lived on other people's terms. Saying no when you need to is a life lived on your terms. And if you want to move forward, if you want to grow, if you want to feel peace instead of resentment, you must understand that every no you give is simply a way of saying I matter too. Would you like me to now expand keynote no to into 1,500 words in the same flow with no ending sentences or headings? Every no to others is a yes to your priorities, peace, and growth. Life is constantly demanding pieces of you, your time, your attention, your energy, your presence. People will always want something from you, whether it's family, friends, colleagues, or even strangers. And if you don't decide what matters most to you, someone else will decide for you. The truth is, every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your values, you're unintentionally saying no to the things that truly matter. That's why learning the power of no is not just about rejecting what's wrong for you. It's about making space for what's right. Think of priorities like a garden. You have limited soil, limited water, limited sunlight. If you plant too many seeds, the garden becomes overcrowded and nothing grows to its full potential. Weeds start to take over, and before you know it, the beauty you intended to create is hidden under things that don't belong. Saying no is pulling out the weeds. It's creating room for your most important plants, your health, your goals, your family, your dreams to grow strong and thrive. Without saying no, your priorities suffocate. With it, they flourish. Peace is another gift that comes from saying no. Think about how often we feel exhausted, not because we are incapable, but because we are overcommitted. We take on projects we don't want. We show up to events we'd rather skip. We lend energy we don't have. And at the end of the day, we collapse into bed feeling drained and restless. This cycle steals peace. But when you practice saying no, you give yourself permission to rest, to breathe, to spend your time intentionally. Peace doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from doing the right things. And peace isn't found in a packed schedule. It's found in the spaces you intentionally create by choosing what not to do. Growth is perhaps the most powerful reward of all. Every no you give to distractions, to meaningless obligations, to draining commitments is a yes to your personal growth. It's a yes to developing yourself, a yes to learning, a yes to pursuing your goals with focus. Growth requires space. Growth requires attention. Growth requires energy. And you cannot give those things to yourself if they are constantly being handed out to everyone else. Each no is like carving out a piece of your life where you get to plant seeds for your future. It might be uncomfortable at first because you've been trained to people please, but the moment you start doing it, you realize how much stronger and more capable you become. Consider the moments in your life when you felt overwhelmed. Chances are it wasn't because of one big yes. It was the collection of dozens of small yeses that piled up until you couldn't breathe. Saying yes without thought leads to a crowded life with no direction. Saying no gives your life structure, focus, and clarity. And clarity is freedom. You no longer wander through your days pulled in 100 directions. Instead, you know where your energy is going, you know what you're building, and you know what you're protecting. When you say no to others, you are not closing doors. You are opening the right ones. You're opening the door to a healthier body because you said no to the late night habits that drain you. You're opening the door to stronger relationships because you said no to people who don't value you. You're opening the door to financial stability because you said no to wasteful spending. You're opening the door to inner peace because you said no to unnecessary drama. Every no has a hidden yes on the other side, and that yes is what leads to transformation. But here's the challenge. Many people feel guilty because they think saying no means they are rejecting someone else's needs. Yet in reality, what you are doing is choosing wisely. You cannot be everywhere. You cannot do everything. You cannot please everyone. Trying to will only lead to failure in all areas. By saying no, you give your yes the power to actually mean something. You give yourself the ability to show up fully, not half-heartedly. When you say yes to everything, your presence is scattered. When you say yes to the right things, your presence is powerful. Think of successful people, not just in terms of wealth or fame, but in terms of fulfillment. They didn't get there by saying yes to every opportunity. They got there by saying no to the wrong ones. They understood that a focused yes is worth more than 1,000 distracted agreements. They protected their time with intention. They guarded their peace with boundaries. They fueled their growth by refusing to let distractions steal their attention. That is the discipline of no. That is the wisdom of self-control. Every time you say no, you are also training yourself to trust your intuition. You are reminding yourself that your inner voice matters. Too often, we ignore that voice in order to avoid conflict or disapproval. But when you begin honoring it, you build confidence. You start trusting yourself more. You begin to see that your life is not built on the approval of others, but on the foundation of your own choices. That inner strength creates resilience. That resilience creates growth. And here's something most people miss: the world benefits more when you say no to the wrong things. Why? Because when you protect your priorities, when you guard your peace, when you commit to your growth, you become more impactful. You have more energy to give where it truly matters. You inspire others by your clarity and your strength. You show them what it looks like to live with purpose instead of people. pleasing. Your no doesn't just serve you. It serves everyone connected to you because it allows you to become your best self. The act of saying no becomes easier when you shift your perspective. Instead of focusing on what you're turning down, focus on what you're making room for. When you decline that invitation, you're making room for rest. When you pass on that project, you're making room for excellence in the work that matters most. When you say no to an unhealthy relationship, you're making room for love that uplifts you. When you say no to distractions, you're making room for your goals to take shape. Suddenly, no longer feels like rejection. It feels like a gift you give to yourself. This is how growth is built, not by endlessly piling responsibilities on your back, but by choosing with wisdom. Not by chasing every opportunity, but by cultivating the right ones. Growth happens when you have the space to breathe, to think, to create, to learn, to stretch yourself without breaking. That space comes only when you protect it fiercely with your no. Would you like me to now create 30 image prompts scene by scene for both expanded keynotes, just like I did with your previous speeches?